Hello everyone. We'll discuss parliamentary executive in India. When the Constitution of India was written, India already had some experience of running the parliamentary system. Under the Acts of 1919 and 1935, this experience had shown that in the parliamentary system, the executive can be effectively controlled by the representations or representatives of the people. The makers of the Indian Constitution wanted to ensure that the government would be sensitive to public expectations and would be responsible and accountable. The other alternative to the parliamentary executive was the presidential form of the government. Presidential form. But the presidential executive puts much emphasis on the president is the chief executive and a source of all executive power. There is always the danger of personality cult in presidential executive. The makers of the Indian Constitution wanted a government that would have a strong executive branch. But at the same time, enough safeguards should be there to check against the personality cult. In the parliamentary form, there are many mechanisms that ensures that the executive will be answerable to and controlled by the legislature or people's representatives. So the constitution adopted the parliamentary system of executive for the governments both at national and state levels. According to this system, there is a president who is the formal head of the state of India, and the prime minister and the councils of ministers which run the government at the national level. At the state level, the executive comprises the governors and chief minister and the councils of ministers. The Constitution of India vests the executive power of the Union, formally in the President. The President exercises these powers through the Council of Ministers, headed by the Prime Minister. The President is elected for a period of 5 years, but there is no direct election by the people for the office of President. The President is elected indirectly. This means that the President is elected not by the ordinary citizens but by the elected MLAs and MPs. This election takes place in accordance with the principle of proportional representation with single transferable vote. The president can be removed from office only by parliament by following the procedure for impeachment. This procedure requires a special majority as explained in the last chapter. Okay, special majority we have discussed. The only ground for impeachment is a violation of the constitution. Okay. Now, power and position of president. See, Article 74, Part 1. There shall be a council of ministers with the Prime Minister at the head to aid and advise the President who shall in the exercise of his functions act in accordance with such advice, provided provided that the President may require the Council of Ministers to reconsider such advice, and the President shall act in accordance with the advice tendered after such reconsideration. Do you know what the word shall means here? When we say President shall, so it means it indicates that the advice is binding on the president. In view of the controversy about the scope of the president's powers, specific mention was made in the constitution by an amendment that the advice of the council of the ministers will be binding on the president. By another amendment made later, it was decided that the President can ask the Council of Ministers to reconsider its advice, but has to accept the reconsidered advice of the Council of Ministers. We have already seen that President is the formal head of the government. In this formal sense, the president has wide-ranging executive, legislative, judicial, and emergency powers. In a parliamentary system, these powers are in reality used by the president only on the advice of the Council of Ministers. The Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers have support of the majority in the Lok Sabha, and they are the real executive. In the most of the cases, the president has to follow the advice of the Council of Ministers. Now, see, Jawaharlal Nehru, in his words, we didn't give him any real power, but we have made his position one of authority and dignity. The Constitution wants to create neither a real executive nor a mere figurehead, but a head that neither reigns nor governs. It wants to create a great figurehead. Now, the question is, am I just a figurehead or am I asking real questions? Did the Textbook writers give me power to ask questions I wish to ask, or by asking questions they have in their mind. Am I asking questions they have in their mind? So, discretionary powers of president discretionary power of the president. On the basis of above discussion, can we infer that the president has no discretionary power under any circumstances? This will be incorrect assessment. Constitutionally, the president has a right to be informed of all important matters and deliberations of council of ministers. The Prime Minister is obliged to furnish all the information that the President may call for. President often writes to the Prime Minister and expresses his views on matters confronting the country. Besides this, there are at least three situations where the President can exercise the powers using his or her own discretion. Firstly, we have already noted that the President can send back the advice given by the Council of Ministers and ask the Council to reconsider the decision. In doing this, the President acts on his own discretion. Okay, now on his own discretion. When the President thinks that the advice has certain flaws or legal lacunae or it is not in the best interest of the country, the President can ask the Council to reconsider the decision. Although the Council can still send back the same advice. And the President would then be bound by that advice. Again, same I, the President would be bound. Such a request by the President to reconsider the decision would naturally carry a lot of weight. So, this is one way in which the President can act in his own discretion. Secondly, the President also has veto power by which he can withhold or refuse to give assent to bills other than money bill passed by the Parliament. Every bill passed by the Parliament goes to the President for his assent before it becomes a law. Okay, before law, it is bill. The President can send the bill back to the Parliament asking it to um, reconsider the bill. This veto power is limited because if the Parliament passes the same bill again and send it back to the President, then the President has to give assent to that bill. देना ही पड़ेगा. However, there is no mention in the Constitution about the time limit within which the President must send the bill back for the reconsideration. This means that the President can just keep the bill pending with him without any time limit. This gives the President an informal power to use a veto in very effective manner. This is sometimes referred to as pocket veto. Then thirdly, Third kind of discretion arises more out of political circumstances. Formally, the president appoints the prime minister. Normally, in the parliamentary system, a leader who has the support of majority in the Lok Sabha would be, with a majority, would be appointed as a prime minister, and the question of discretion would not arise. But imagine a situation when, after an election, no leader has a clear majority in Lok Sabha. Imagine further that after attempts to forge alliances, two or three leaders are claiming that they have the support of the majority in the House. Now the president has to decide whom to appoint as the prime minister. Okay, in such a situation, the president has to use his own discretion in judging who really may have the support of the majority or who can actually form and run the government. Since 1989, major political changes have considerably increased the importance of presidential office. In the four parliamentary elections held from 1989 to 1998, four parliamentary elections, no single party or coalition attained a majority in the Lok Sabha. These situations demanded presidential intervention either in order to constitute governments or to grant a request for dissolution of Lok Sabha by a prime minister who could not prove majority in the House. It may thus be said the presidential discretion is related to political conditions. There is greater scope of presidential assertiveness when governments are not stable and coalitions occupy power. For the most part, president is a formal power holder and a ceremonial head of the nation. You may wonder why then do we need a president if it is a formal power holder? In a parliamentary system, the Council of Ministers is dependent on the support of the majority in the legislature. This also means that a Council of Ministers may be removed at any time. A new Council of Ministers will have to be put in place. Such a situation requires a head of the state. This needs the head of the state who has a fixed term, who may be empowered to appoint the prime minister and who may symbolically represent the entire country. This is exactly the role of the president in ordinary circumstances, besides when no party has a clear majority. The president has the additional responsibilities of making a choice and appointing in the prime minister to run the government of the country. When we talk about discretionary power, we saw that there is no time limit on the president for giving his assent to a bill. No time limit. Do you know that such a thing has already happened? In 1986, the parliament passed a bill known as Indian Post Office Amendment Bill. In 1986, Parliament